dear members of the faculty, dear students who are still here during the winter break, good afternoon to all of you. I would like to thank the Director and the head and the faculty of the International Department to give me this opportunity to come over here and talk to you about Pakistan and about Pakistan's foreign policy and Pakistan-Ukraine bilateral relations. I would like it to be more of an interactive session where you can ask questions as you want, if you want to clarify things, and that's where I will be very pleased to clarify what you want and give my comments on that. Go slow.
There will not be a translation because everyone in the room speaks English. Yes.
I thought I heard a noise, so I thought probably there is a translation, so I was breaking in between. But it's good that if you can all understand whatever English I can communicate with you, and you can understand the point of view that I am going to project you. Can we have the next slide? How do we shift slide? I'm sure that you are aware of Pakistan being students of international department, and those who otherwise are aware students over here, and where Pakistan stands, where is it located in terms of South Asian country, and what's the size, how big is the population, what is the history. So I will not go into those details because they are more available to you, but in the process, as we talk about different things, you will be able to talk about these issues that I bring up. So I will start straight away with the foreign policy of Pakistan. Being an ambassador, it is also my bread and butter to be able to implement the foreign policy that we have. And as you can see, the foreign policy statement displayed on the screen, it is the statement which was recorded by the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in February 1948, when he was directing as what kind of a foreign policy the new country, which was created on 14th of August 1947, should have. And you can see that the punchlines here are of friendliness and goodwill towards all nations of the world. The country does not cherish any aggressive designs against any country or a nation, and we believe in principles of honesty and fair play in national and international dealings, and are prepared to make our utmost contribution to the promotion of peace, prosperity among the nations of the world. Pakistan will never be found lacking in extending its material and moral support to the oppressed and suppressed peoples of the world and upholding the principles of United Nations Charter. So just keep in mind this date, that is in 1948, when in 1944 the Second World War had just ended. The old order of colonial order was being dismantled. New countries were being liberated, some were liberated, some were not liberated, and it is in that environment when the UN was just being set up as an international organization that the founder of Pakistan wrote this statement as a guide for the people. And more importantly, while Pakistan as an ex-colonial state fought and got its independence, so it was always thinking about other colonized states which required to be supported to get independence. So it is in that time frame when the international environment was of such that the old order was being dismantled and the new order was formulating post-World War II and post-colonial era. This statement of his becomes this is the picture of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is also known as founder of Pakistan. And if you want to make it a punchline into what the statement meant, his statement meant was peace within and peace without. That is what Pakistan has stood for since its days of creation. And if you Moving further, Pakistan then framed its constitution and imbibed the statement of its founder into the constitution so that it becomes a permanent guiding marker for people to come and the leaders who followed him. And it is the Article 40 of the Constitution of Pakistan, which foreign policy being translated as the state shall, which is the Pakistani state shall, endeavor to preserve and strengthen fraternal relations among Muslim countries based on Islamic unity, support the common interests of peoples of Asia, Africa, Latin America, that is the global south we are talking of, not the global north but global south, which was then being liberated at that point in time. And Pakistan as an Islamic country also stood for unity amongst the Muslim countries all over the world. And the objective was to promote international peace and security, foster goodwill and friendly relations among all nations, and encourage the settlement of international disputes by peaceful means. And this last statement is most important, that violence should be avoided in all circumstances, and there are disputes because new countries were coming up, there were border settlement issues, there were issues related to refugees, there were issues related to distribution of resources. So all those issues which were then major issues at that point in time were recorded as that we would like to engage in a dialogue to resolve all those disputes. And now when we look at our foreign policy, we look at in terms of what does it mean today, about 73 years later on, as to how in the current environment we would like foreign policy to be guiding the people of Pakistan. And Pakistan seeks to promote the internationally recognized norms of interstate relations, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states, non-interference in internal matters of other states, non-aggression and peaceful settlement of disputes. Pakistan has therefore always sought to develop friendly and cordial relations with all countries of the world, and in this context, Pakistan-Ukraine bilateral relations are very important because for the last 30 years, 3 decades, Pakistan and Ukraine, guided by this foreign policy statement, have been very friendly, cordial bilateral relations. We have grown in different fields of life together, and that relationship is continuing, and as time goes by, not only that it is consolidating, it is also we are building in and expanding into new spheres. So as international department students, you would know that a statement then translates into a policy, then translates into objectives, which can be easily defined, and those objectives then can be used by the executioners to implement in terms of the ground reality. So it is, first of all, is to project Pakistan and promote its image as a dynamic, progressive, moderate and democratic Islamic country. That is its identity, being an Islamic country, imbibing 97% Muslim population and standing by the ethos of a Muslim country. Developing friendly relations with all countries of the world, especially major powers and immediate neighbors. And as Ukraine today stands, Pakistan is also located in a geographically very significant region, which is also called the crossroads in many ways, because we have very big neighbors around us. We have India, which is 5 times the size of Pakistan. Towards the north, we have China, which is much more bigger than Pakistan in terms of population and in terms of size, and even bigger than India. We have Afghanistan. Then, because of Afghanistan, for about 40 years, in past 70 years, we have 2 very big neighbors whom we had to live with. First, it was Soviet Union, which came into Afghanistan in 1979, and then we had to live with Soviet Union as our neighbor in Afghanistan. And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and from 2001 onwards, Pakistan had to live and develop relations, have interface with the United States, led by NATO, other countries which were part of NATO being present over there. Of course, the circumstances both time which brought these two big powers, major powers to our neighborhood were very, very tragic in one way or the other, but then in which Pakistan had no role in any ways to invite Soviet Union or United States to be part, to come to our neighborhood. So that when then you have four big powers which are there in the vicinity, diplomacy and development of relations becomes an art in itself. So that is why we talk about having friendly relations, working relations, even if they are not very friendly at some point in time, with all major powers of the world, because they were, by one way or other, they became our neighbors. India is our neighbor, China is our neighbor, can't choose between them, but then United States and Soviet Union also became our neighbor, and towards the east, towards west and south, we have, of course, the big powerful Middle East and Iran located over there. So it is, in terms of geopolitics, a very complex situation that we live in, and one has to grapple with that complexities as everyday problems and situations occur. Of course, the first responsibility of any state is to safeguard its national security, geostrategic interests, and for us it was important because the issue was of Kashmir, which brought Pakistan and India at a conflict situation, and that conflict situation has ever since continued because Kashmir was a disputed region according to the instruments of partition, which said that all regions which will become, which form or which have majority Muslim population will become part of Pakistan. While others were allowed to become part of Pakistan, Kashmir was not. It has a Muslim majority over there, and it was forcefully occupied by India. Different reasons have been given, different explanations have been given. Leave that aside. The basic fact remains that it is a Muslim majority area, and the Muslims wanted to join Pakistan, and for that the issue was taken to the United Nations, and United Nations Security Council then gave its resolutions in 1948 in which it called for a referendum for the people of Kashmir to decide their future. Should they want to join Pakistan or should they want to join India? It is their choice, and Pakistan respects that, but Pakistan has since then demanded repeatedly that let the referendum be organized, but one way or other, the other party, that India, has not let that happen. So Kashmir is a special status for us over here. As we said, and you could have picked up the thread in the Qaid-e-Azam statement, in the Constitution Article 40, and then the Foreign Policy Statement, and then coming into objectives. So Kashmir is an issue with us, where we only demand that according to the UN resolutions, which UN, all the countries which are part of United Nations as a setup, as member states, had expressed their desire and they expressed their willingness that Kashmir be allowed to have a referendum and let the Kashmiris decide their own future. And this is what we stand for even till today. But unfortunately, they are being subjugated. This right has been denied to them, and blatantly now not only that the right has been denied, they are being integrated. Initially they had a special status, now that special status has been removed, and they are being forcefully integrated into India, which is absolutely contrary and against the UN Security Council resolutions, but happens blatantly where the power politics comes into play. Consolidating our commercial and economic cooperation with the international community, I will talk about this objective, so that how does this translate specifically where Pakistan and Ukraine's bilateral relations are concerned, and you can then see that the policy statement, the constitution, the objectives, and how they get translated in the actual ground realities. Safeguarding the interests of Pakistani diaspora abroad, this is the function and responsibility of every country. There is nothing outstanding about it. Like Ukraine would be concerned about its population and its diaspora, which lives all over the world, concentrated whether in Canada, United States, Argentina, and other places. So they have their historic linkages, and same is the case over here, that Pakistani diaspora, which lives in former colonies, colonial states, that is in UK and in the United States and anywhere else, we have to protect their interests because they are there, they have moved out because of one reason or other, but they still continue to be called Pakistani in one class or other, so it is there. And of course, ensuring lastly optimal utilization of national resources for regional and international cooperation. We are not selfish over here, that we are talking of our resources to be used for betterment of Pakistan only. We are talking of our resources to be used jointly together with the regional powers and also through international cooperation for general benefit of humanity itself. Of course, Pakistanis would benefit, but we do not want to selfishly benefit ourselves, but also benefit international community from whatever resources that we have, may it be commodity-related resources, may be added as a human productivity, the human capital itself, or any other thing that we can talk of today as the time goes by. We still focus on heavily on international cooperation and promote that in all possible ways. And this is the reason that I am also here today to talk to you about this. So let's come over now to ground realities and look at where do we stand today, which will be concerning you. This is history and what has happened in the past, what are the issues I have talked about, what are the challenges which we face today. Ukraine has its own sets of challenges where it is located in the ex-Soviet space and there is a threat of war, there is a conflict going on in the eastern region, some of its area has been lost to other powers. We have had the same situation, and this is where Kashmir, we have talked of, that it was occupied forcefully. One part of Pakistan, which was East Pakistan, was lost because of other powers' interaction over there. And so we have more or like the same situation, and like Ukraine and Pakistan, both are located on the crossroads of history, where history itself has its own imprint on our policies and our outcomes that there are. So foremost is of course today Afghanistan for us. Pakistan had always proposed to the United States that there is no solution to the 2-decade-old war that was being fought in Afghanistan. The United States had put in more than $2 trillion. There is not a single dollar's worth today to show that where that $2 trillion is. Not any one hospital, not one road, not one building, not one dam, nothing is over there on the ground. But in spite of that, when this war after 10 years went into a stage of stalemate and there was nobody winning this war, so we proposed to the United States that we would like to help you to get out from here to having a peace deal with the Taliban over there, who were actually their enemies, who were fighting to get occupying forces out of Afghanistan, because they are very patriotic, fierce people. And they had done the same thing 30 years before that against Soviet Union. When Soviet Union occupied Afghanistan from 1979 to 1989, 10 years, these proud Afghanis fought against Soviet Union and forced them out. They did the same to the United States, because that is what every national would do for his country and love of his land, that when an occupying force comes in, they will pick up arms and fight it out. But when there was no result that was going in, Pakistan in the last about 3 years, you would have, all our aware students would have seen that we fostered, helped the United States to conclude an agreement with them so that it could give them a peaceful exit from that country. But that peaceful exit has been devastating for the common Afghanis. There is, after the peace agreement, Kabul fell. As you know in the news, we helped everyone who wanted to get out of Kabul to evacuate from Kabul, because people didn't want to stay there. They never knew what the Taliban regime will bring to them in terms of their independence, freedoms and rights. There were many Ukrainians who were working in Afghanistan, whom we helped, and your ministry knows how we helped them to get out of Kabul and come into Pakistan and then evacuate to Kiev and other places. So this is our foremost challenge. There is no state over there. The state is there. There is no governing apparatus over there. The governing apparatus is temporary. there is no stability, the banking system is not working, humanitarian crises are growing by the day because all Western countries have chosen to block everything which belongs to Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is our neighbor and we have to help the people in Afghanistan to stabilize because they directly affect us in so many ways. Recently Pakistan called for a special OIC meeting in which all countries participated and agreed to help them, the Afghan government, to stabilize the situation over there. It is a continuing problem. This will continue for some period of time and I do not know what will be the outcome, but we will, as a country, as a part of foreign policy, help our neighbors to stabilize themselves and not become a problem as they had become a problem for the world when suddenly Soviet Union evacuated from there, leaving a huge power vacuum in 1980, bolted from there, creating a huge power vacuum once again in our very neighborhood. Jammu and Kashmir, I have talked about, I will not go further into the details, but I have talked about, to give you a history, that UN has promised to them a referendum. That referendum is being denied one way or other. The resolutions are in place, but they are still operative and effective, but not being implemented. Then is the world has taken notice recently, not Pakistan, but UK and other countries have laid down, and United Nations have laid down detailed reports on how state terrorism is being conducted against the people of Kashmiris. There have been incidents of mass murders, genocide in part, demographic changes forcefully so as to dilute the Muslim majority over there, and all those things that are happening on ground you read every day. Since our objective is to resolve issue peacefully through dialogue, so we continue to highlight those issues to the world. There are dossiers which have been circulated by Pakistan, and then of course there is a bit of Islamophobia which prevails in America and Western world because of the 20-year-long war which they have fought. So for everything, the religion gets blamed. There is nothing religion has to do. You can talk about certain people or actors who are there and who are taking action on their own hands because the international system is not delivering justice. So when the international system doesn't deliver justice, so not only the state is a party to it, but also people become party to that, because the people think that if the international system doesn't deliver justice or doesn't stand by its resolutions, it is obligatory on the people also to participate in bringing about justice in whatever ways they can. But this is not sanctioned by any state. No state would sanction because it would undermine its authority, and Pakistan does not also sanction that. But still, you can't control the people in this world where it is connected as a social media. It's a network world. Everybody has access to ideas. Everybody knows is better informed. Your generation has grown in this social media age, and you are much better informed than what I have been talking about over here. After the fall of Kabul, of course, Pakistan we helped United States to have a peace agreement. Forced whatever resources that we had on Taliban, exerted on Taliban to have a peace agreement. And when they had a peace agreement, the Kabul fell despite the peace agreement. So United States thinks that it is Pakistan that has to be blamed because they have fallen and there has been a power vacuum because Pakistan. It is not at all that, and we still want to reset our relationship with them, talk sense to them and talk sense with them, that history has shown to you, it is of no use to leave this area, Afghanistan especially, because every time you leave the power vacuum and you get out, it comes back to you and bounces back to you with an even severer vengeance. When Soviet Union went back from that area, they left a vacuum over there, you had 9/11 and incidents of 9/11. And now when you have once again, after 20 years of devastating the country, again gone from there, leaving a power vacuum, I do not know in 10 years' time in what form it comes back to the world, because there are independent actors over there, there is no state, there are casualties every day, people don't have food, people don't have access to water, clean drinking water or hospitals and other things. So then it is a human being which reacts and reacts different ways. And lastly, of course, we have all suffered COVID. Our economies have been hit, and it is a challenge to come out of COVID. And hopefully, I see a sense of hope in everyone that probably in 2022 we will be able to come out of COVID situation and move to normalize our way of living all over the world. The economies have been hit. Pakistan's economy got adversely hit because of the COVID situation. It lost about $100 billion because of in GDP, because of 2 decades of war in Afghanistan. Our losses in terms of economic losses were closer to $400 billion, and the 10 years when Soviet Union was there, so our economic losses stood at about $300 billion because our big 900 kilometers of the borders got closed and nothing could be done over there. So overall, principally, if you take it, it was $1,000 billion that Pakistan's economy has lost in the last 30-40 years, but we want to still get out of it. Pakistan is basically a connecting country. You have heard stories and read books about Silk Route and other things, and the Silk Route is something which passes through Pakistan, historically has gone through that area, and now it has been revived in form of Belt and Road Initiative by China, but in our part, where we are collaborating with China, it is called Pakistan-China Economic Corridor, or CPEC. It's about a $62 billion project where the infrastructure develops so that Pakistan can connect China with Middle East, it can connect China with Africa, it can connect India with Central Asia, it can connect Central Asia with Middle East and South Asia. So it has got a geostrategic position where Pakistan is the key connecting country, and we are mindful of that, and that is where we are projecting every effort that we want to help these regions to connect. And once the regions connect, they will be able to develop together jointly instead of fighting with each other. The businesses will work with each other, and there will be better overall geoeconomic and geostrategic situation which can be created. With this little insight, I will come over to Pakistan and Ukraine bilateral relations, and how we now, in terms of foreign policy objectives and everything and the current challenges, how we stand together as two friendly countries and what are we looking forward to. I will not play this doc, because, and if you want to see this, I will be leaving it over here. How this is a $62 billion project which is connecting and realizing and reviving the Silk Road of the past today. So, Pakistan, this is when Pakistan, we celebrated our 75th Independence Day in Kyiv. All Ukrainian people, you can see, joined us to that occasion, and it was very historic that day for us to be together in having a joint celebration. All the military officers and their spouses also joined in to celebrate this occasion jointly, for which we are thankful. And take a look over here and for Ukraine and Pakistan's perspective. So Ukraine and Pakistan, as if you compare the two countries, the area, Ukrainian area is about 75% of population. So we by and large good enough in terms of size of the population, size of the area. If you look at the population, there is a huge difference over here, for 43.7 million for Ukraine and 220 million population of Afghanistan. Pakistan GDP stands at Ukrainian about $155.5 billion, and Pakistan is about 263 at this COVID hit environment. Before COVID in 2019, our GDP stood at $367 billion, so we got a hit of $100 billion in a matter of 2 years time frame. So this is how we compare. You can see the size, the spread of the two countries and how we relate to each other. Pakistan immediately recognized Ukraine after its independence and formally recognized it on 16th March 1991. We have 3 decades of friendship which has been there, and on 16th March this year we will be celebrating that. I am arranging a discussion at the Diplomatic Academy, so where we can jointly talk about what we have achieved up till now, what's the way forward, what are the areas we need to focus on, so that we can collaborate even more than that. But the principles on which we have lived together is, of course, mutual respect, cooperation for peace and development. So we have very friendly political cooperation, all legal framework which is required to enable political activity, jointly economic activity. We have concluded in the first few years of our relationship. They are in place. These legal frameworks enable us to do businesses together, to have political interaction. And of course, the foremost means of political interaction is having bilateral political consultations very frequently as we can, every year possibly, and then leadership level exchanges that we can do to talk about issues that are currently relevant. And you would remember that last year when there were forces gathering on the eastern borders of Ukraine about this time of March, April, Pakistan Army Chief, I had invited him to come. He's the second most powerful person, and despite that there was threat of war at that time also, he came. Russia wanted him not to come, but I told him to come, and he came, and we had a very fruitful discussions, and it helped us to open up a lot of other avenues which were not being opened up now. So in terms of economic cooperation, we have both very good potentials, but it are not realized. So when I came last year, I looked at the numbers and showed that in 1 year's time frame, we must get to $500 million of trade, and in another 2 years time frame, we must cross $1 billion of joint trade that we have. And after 1 year, today I can very proudly report to you that with the efforts that we put in, the trade delegations that we brought in, the business forums that we conducted, and the changes in laws and changes of regulations where they require banking rules so that to facilitate the businessmen, we have for the first 10 months figure we crossed $500 million. So next month when we get the complete figures, I am very sure we will be beyond $500 million, and in next 1 or 2 years we should cross $1 billion of joint trade. Defense technology has been a hallmark of our collaboration, and there is a G2G level of interaction that takes place. We have very friendly relations between Pakistan and Ukraine, and also we are talking of now moving beyond what we have been in terms of interfacing, jointly working on things, but also doing joint ventures together, bilaterally, Pakistan and Ukraine, or Pakistan, Ukraine, Turkey and other countries, so as to develop technologies which are future related and that provide security to our two countries, but also other countries who want to become of them. So academic cooperation is something which has been missing in our bilateral relations. Somehow or other, Pakistan has not been able to send that many students out there, and you've seen that when I came last year, we had about 339 students only in Ukraine. And because of our efforts last year, our number has crossed now 2,000, and we are looking at another 1,000 added. So hopefully next month when the final numbers come out, we should be having more than 3,000 students of Pakistani origin in Ukraine. And that is of course talking about students who are there, but not only limited to that. We have just was explaining to your vice rector that we have been able to connect our universities. 3 major universities have connected with the universities in Ukraine for faculty exchange, for student exchange, for ideas, for joint seminars and other things. And I have just a few moments ago offered another major university, that's the National University of Science and Technologies, offer to Ukraine to do joint collaboration, and of course Western Ukrainian University would like to benefit from that. We are reaching out to Ukraine for jointly acting in culture, sports and tourism. A few months ago I organized the first ever Pakistan-Ukraine Squash Friendship Cup. More than 100 squash players from Pakistan, from Ukraine, and 34 women participated. There were teams from Pakistan, and it was a good activity that took place. And because we two countries live far apart, 5,000 kilometers, so the more we interact, the better it is, and that is one of the relations with Pakistani diasporas. We have restructured our limited diaspora that we have appointed honorary welfare representatives who interface between the embassy and the diaspora to help them solve their problems. And of course, Pakistan and Ukraine extensively cooperate at the multilateral cooperation level, like the bodies at the World Bank, at the NGOs, IGOs, the international organizations, the UN organization, where Pakistan supports Ukrainian membership and Ukraine supports Pakistani membership in all these IGOs. And there has been a good outcome of the multilateral cooperation that we have had up to now. So I will stop over here. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and listening to my point of view. I would like to hear your point of view if you have any of this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador. I have a question. How do you see the development of cooperation between our countries in next 10 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much for looking forward in the decade ahead so as to how we can work out. I have given you the basic areas in which we can cooperate and we are cooperating. The most important thing, of course, for our two countries is to jointly work together to do our joint trade and increase our trade, because this is something which is lacking. There is immense scope of increasing the numbers, and if we do our trade and joint ventures together, the people of both the countries will become prosperous. There will be more exchange of action, more exchange of relations, more exchange of people, and that is where both sides will benefit. And in 10 years time frame, if we can become major trading partners, I have initiated the process in which we have started negotiating the preferential trade agreement. It will take a couple of years to happen, and then it can rapidly move into a free trade agreement. And if we do that, then there will be a lot of possibilities of growing together. So we want to grow together in the next 10 years time frame. We are also looking forward to peace, stability, and sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine be respected by all powers around them, as the principles of foreign policy I have outlined. And Pakistan will always stand with Ukraine in voicing its concern for its own sovereignty and security. We can, and we are cooperating at this stage. In 10 years time frame, the multilateral organizations that are there, the multilateral cooperation that is there, the IGOs, etc., that is an area and a scope in which there is a lot of work which we can do together. It is not only supporting each other's members, but jointly working on resolutions, jointly working on some laws, jointly working, adding to existing laws and norms and customs, because the times are changing fast, and your generation will be looking forward to what is happening 10 years from now. You will be facing the front. So it is now to think about the decade ahead. So it is a wonderful question, and I thank you very much for making me look 10 years ahead. I was just looking 2 years to 3 years ahead. So thank you, and I will also look at now add 7 or more years to our action plan that we are working on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I would like to request you as a Pakistani that the kind of potential in tourism we have, I would like to request you a little bit if you can explain on that, because the kind of potential we have, I think that should be there. Thank you.
I think we started with, because I said that Ukraine did not know very much Pakistan, and whatever the senior Ukrainians knew, that was from the perspective of Soviet Union, in which they were in Afghanistan and they had their own views. The younger generation in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, does not that much know Pakistan. So from last 2 years, I have been trying to help media, regular media, to go to Pakistan and report on Pakistan. So as to inform Ukrainian population about Pakistan, the tourism potentials we have talked about, but otherwise about Pakistan, to become friends and be together. So Dmitry Komarov, I have sponsored him, we facilitated him to go to Pakistan and make programs, and he's been there and he's done a wonderful job making 24 episodes of the projects that he stayed. And we did not ask him to tailor-made make Pakistan and present only the sweet image on something which is very glossy, but so we said just report as it is, and there will be some glaring aspects, there will be something very good in it. This is the state of every country. There is poverty of extreme levels which you can see in the United States should you want to see, but there is also prosperity of extreme levels you can see in Europe, but nobody would like to look at the poverty lines. And if you go, so that is what perspectives that you want to see, and he has been able to show all dimensions. Of course, media needs to sensationalize, otherwise nobody will see. So he does some bit of sensationalism, so I am okay with that. So what he has been able to show you has been especially the northern areas of Pakistan where we attract the most tourism. And the northern areas of Pakistan is like the three biggest mountain ranges, the Karakoram range, the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush range that coincide and meet over there. We have more than 6 peaks of 8,000 meters and high. K2 is of course the second highest and the most difficult to climb. And then there is a lot of tourism which is there, which is people not only just going there to climb. I know from my own experience that there's every year there are a lot of Japanese tourists who come to Concordia, which is a place at the base of K2 mountain from where you can see all those 6 peaks that I have talked of. They come and variate over there, they have spent time over there. So these are the tourism areas, the northern areas, and Kamala has shown to you that how and ways that we can. We are working hard on, because the high mountains are very difficult to access. So by road infrastructure, a lot of work has been done, is being done to make these areas very accessible for common man to be able to reach out, for foreigners to reach out. Now there are special packages which are being offered for people to go to the northern areas of Pakistan and be able to see and do tourism. There is a lot of tourism that happens in terms of trophy hunting in the northern areas. And this is not indiscriminate trophy hunting. It is of course regulated by the communities who own that area. They sell that tender for the trophy each year, or depending upon the number of animals that there are. And Markhor is a very unique animal which is found over there, and a lot of people go to there to do trophy hunting for Markhor, for ibex, for Marco Polo sheep and other such animals which are not found anywhere else. Then you come to the cities. Of course, Pakistan has got to operate in the cities along the coastline. It is long. It is a 900-kilometer long coastline, and most of the beaches are very pristine, untouched, and people go there also. We are now breaking because of the China-Pakistan economic corridor also, but otherwise also we are developing the infrastructure so that people can reach out to all those untouched areas where tourism can be done. So Ukrainians are invited over there. We will be doing at one point in time a special expo for tourism development, so that we can inform each other. Not only that I want Pakistanis from Ukrainians to go to Pakistan, but I will be also very equally interested for Pakistanis to come into Ukraine and for tourism related reasons. But it helps to know each other, it helps to see new areas and develop better relations and understanding.
Your Excellency, I am a President of International Relations, and I have a question. Whether education in Pakistan is different from Ukraine? Thank you.
Of course, we follow 2 different streams of education. Education in Pakistan is, of course, is developed indigenously, as for all countries. It is developed indigenously. Pakistan has, as you would know, Pakistan is basically a federation of 4 provinces. Each province has their own specific language, their own culture and their own environment. They got together to make Pakistan. The official language is of course in Urdu, which you know about, and then also the official working language in the country is English. So this way the education system that is constructed over a period of time is basically same as globally, with having a high school and then having your university education. In between you can do some colleges, and then of course senior level education. It's the same as anywhere in the world. What areas we differ in is because much of the education is senior education is done in English. So that is somewhere which is different from Ukraine, where you do your basic education, the high school, up to high school, and in many universities in your own language. We do our education, especially at the high school level and beyond, in English language. So that is where it changes the perspective of international students and ability of our own students to interface with international students over there. Ukrainian system, I was just before coming to your university, medical university, and I was explaining to them that why we have not been able to send more students were because we had two different sets of validation, certification, and also standardization. The universities in Ukraine, in medical universities, I take the example just to give you an example only, but it expands to other areas, have a different system in which when we collaborated together, we were able to work out and grade the Ukrainian medical universities institutions into 3 categories, which we did for our own institutions also. So we have a category A university, category B, or category C university, and that it is in terms of international regulation. For example, if a medical university in Ukraine is recognized by its own regulator, is recognized by 2 international regulators beyond that, then it goes into category A. If it is recognized by 1 international regulator, may it be European, American, or British, or even Australian, then it goes into category B. Those who are recognized by their own regulators only, then they remain in category C. So this is the same standard that we apply to ourselves, and now it is being applied all over the world as well. So standardization process is continuing, and we are looking at, so I was talking to rector of the medical university, and I requested him that to lack 1 certification, if you go into category A automatically, because the only medical university in Ukraine in category A is Kharkiv Medical University, and there's a lot of students who are coming from Pakistan who come to Chernobyl because of, it's very easy, because of the standardization, they go there, they get the degree, they go back home, get a license and start practicing. But if you are not in category A, then you have to go through a sets of exam so as to come up to the level where we expect you to be in Pakistan, and then get a license over there. So there are differences, nuances over here, but by talking to each other, by interfacing, if we are able to help that helps the students in future to come over, we move around freely, and then have standard education. Of course, Ukrainian education system is more aligned and more closer to the European system. Our education system is not so much European in its nature, it's more closer and more aligned with the UK-based education and the American system. So these are the basic.